Greg Bowens, thanks for being with us today. Primary's over, and this governor's race is on, as well as a lot of other races so far. It's been one bizarre political year in Michigan, particularly in the Republican gubernatorial campaign, but they appear to have settled on a choice. Tudor Dixon will represent the party in its challenge of Governor Whitmer this fall. I described her in a column yesterday as perhaps the longest shot gubernatorial candidate I've seen in 40 years of doing this. I don't know if you would agree or not.
But longer than Jeffrey Feiger?
I think so, because I was asked that. I think Feiger was not so long because he had name ID. Everybody knew who Jeffrey Feiger was. He had vote money, and he had a voter base in Detroit. I don't see Tudor Dixon with any of those things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, she's a total newcomer, and she doesn't have that sort of all shucks kind of appeal that Rick Snyder had when he popped up on the scene, if you recall. And and so it should be interesting how this works out. I mean, wow, just from James Craig to the guy Kelly Ryan, is that his name?
Ryan Kelly.
Arrested. Ryan Kelly, yeah, who got arrested and who now won't concede the race.
Even though he finished almost last. Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, we had the first tier, most of the first tier of this race got wiped out for invalid signatures, and Tudor Dixon turned out to be the best of what was left. I do think she's an engaging candidate. She's charismatic. I think she connects with people. I do think she has to hone her message, have a stronger message, and she has to also unite this Republican Party. It's still, despite her endorsement by Donald Trump and the DeVos family, still a lot of people in this party perpetually unhappy. And she's got to bring them together. She's got to raise a lot of money. She's got to raise her own profile. She's got to do a lot of things in a short amount of time. And she's got to get it all exactly right.
Nolan, I don't know. You remember the Tea Party people?
Absolutely.
And how they stormed through Michigan.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. This seems like a real, extreme version of what had occurred with the Tea Party not so long ago. And the politics of grievance has turned on the Republican Party itself. I'll be honest with you, I missed, establishment Republicans. I may disagree with them on a lot of issues, but at the same time, we could at least have those discussions. You can't have discussions with people who are caught up in QAnon and, these crazy conspiracy theories. And Nolan, I don't know if you heard this, but part of the reason why 63 of the 83 counties election returns were delayed was because you had some of these MAGA folks all up in these clerks' offices insisting that cops, ride behind people who had to hand deliver the tabulations from the precinct.
Well, we also had a lot of computer problems, modem problems that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office should have gotten well ahead of before people went into the polls, and the local clerks shouldn't have had to deal with this. But we got a gubernatorial candidate, 2 women running in a year when abortion is going to be a major issue. Gretchen Whitmer is all in on the pro-choice side. She supports this ballot measure, which would make abortion an unregulated environment in Michigan. Tudor Dixon is all in on the other way. She says no exceptions for anything. And I think once again on this issue, the majority of Michiganians won't be heard, won't be representative, because I think they're somewhere in the middle on this.
Nolan, you raise a good point with that. I will say this, that the abortion issue is pouring kerosene on a gas fire, man.
I think abortion will be the rock that this expected red wave crashes on. You already see Republicans downscaling their predictions for their House gains, their U.S. House gains. One time it was 50, 60 seats they hope to pick up. Now they're looking at 19, 20. Realistically, still enough to give them a majority, but not much. Beyond the gubernatorial race, though, we had races all over the ballot in every in every county in this state yesterday. And one of the most interesting, I think, to you and I was that 13th district congressional race, where Sri Thanedar, state representative and millionaire, put 5, 6, 7 million of his own money in that contest and prevailed over a pretty good slate of candidates. He was the only non-African American in this race, and his victory means Detroit, for the first time since Charles Diggs, won't have an African American representative in Congress.
No, that's true. And Nolan, you keep up with this stuff in ways that I wouldn't think that a conservative political commentator would, writer would. And you noted a long time ago downtown, you wrote the column that said, "Where are the black people?"
Yeah.
Well, now guess what? When it comes to Michigan congressional delegation, that same thing is going to be true. And we run up against, as a community, as a society, trying to balance out this push-pull between the need of recognizing that representation really does matter, but then how much does it matter? And so when it came to Sri Thanedar, here's a guy that popped up on the scene, ran against the governor, got the most support in Detroit, and so he moves into Palmer Woods, Sherwood Forest, and wins the seat there. And now his "all shucks, I'm harmless" kind of approach has won him the congressional seat. And Nolan, now every single person that was in that race, with the exception of Mike Griffey, but you endorsed him. You guys endorsed him, so you know him now. But Nolan, there were some people in that race that just shouldn't have been in there, man.
Well, there are too many in the race, and that helped Thanedar. And the redistricting commission has to take some fault here as well. Perhaps maybe not in this race, but black representation overall will go down in January when these new bodies are seated. That's the fault of a redistricting commission that didn't prioritize creating black representation in these new boundary maps.
The redistricting commission was a failure in a lot of ways, not the least of which that Democrats, communities of color, we need to have an honest conversation about race. And we didn't have that during the redistricting process, because you have these other rising communities of color that are represented in Hamtramck, that are represented with Sri Thanedar and the Asian, Pacific Asian Indian community, and along with the Arabic Middle Eastern community. And there was no serious discussion about how do we give them the same kind of opportunity to have fair representation without diminishing the opportunity for African Americans to have that representation.